options. Maybe turtles there. Wait, is this like a home base that I fill with stuff? Ooh. Ah. They're teaching proper pizza etiquette. That's so nice. They actually give you cheat codes in the manual here? That's a next level service. Boxes, manuals, XMLs, comic books! Ooh. So did they originally all wear the same color? I'm actually not sure if I ever knew that. They just team up with Bruce Lee? Fascinating and brain-altering. Animated shows. $1987. That sounds correct. Season 8. Is that when they started, like, mutating and getting weird? Like, more mutated than they already were. Looks like it. Yeah, there's the grossness. At a certain point it was like, why do we need to be ninjas anymore? 2003. Now this is the one that started off with some directions that I liked, but then they turned Shredder into an alien and I wasn't really into that. It also had, I think, my favorite version of Leonardo, but only because he was trying to kind of take over being Raphael. And they already had a Raphael, so it's like, why do we need that? I never watched much of this, although I heard that Chuck Norris was in it. I don't know how briefly. And this seemed to be where they reimagined Raphael as just a giant. At which point I feel like he's not a ninja anymore. I'm a person who's always looking at what's the original vision. And the title is like 4 different things, and one of those things is ninja. So if the characters stop feeling like ninjas at a certain point, then is it still staying true to concept? I did finally get around to checking out this show recently. Rise of the Ninja Turtles. And we got some complaints here and there, but I think this is my new favorite version of Donatello. Personality-wise, I'm not keen on the, quote, impossibly futuristic technology that he has instead of a staff. I feel like that takes away from having a staff. But doing some interesting stuff with it. I'm enjoying watching bits of it here and there. And I found out, this just came up, I forget what I was Googling. Must have been something to do with Ninja Turtles. And Google auto-generated this question of, is Donatello autistic? And I was like, well, why are people asking that? And so I clicked on that and confirmed that on this show in particular, I don't know if this is the case in any other version of Ninja Turtles, but in the case of this show, the writers did in fact write Donatello to be autistic. Which explains why I'm finding his personality endearing. Well, this is the second time that that's happened, retconning the smart one of the group to being the autistic one, because they did that with the Power Rangers movie reboot as well a number of years ago. Is that what writers are doing these days, is just assuming that because a particular character happens to be the smart one, they must therefore be the autistic character? was because all autistic people are super smart geniuses and also extremely attractive. That's very narrow-minded, stereotypical, and probably accurate. That's a very presumptuous, stereotypical, narrow-minded, and probably totally accurate way of looking at things. I should probably feel offended, but I am not. Is that King Ghidorah? Music! Actually, I don't know if I'm gonna run into any copyright issues with these videos. I'm always surprised by the lore of Ninja Turtles when I actually look into it. And not just the stuff that I'm already familiar with. I actually don't remember much of the cartoon, weirdly enough. It's mainly the movies that I remember. The original 3. But when you look into some of the stuff that happened in the comic books, it got gnarly. It just goes to show you what kind of interesting, not always necessarily good, but at the very least interesting and therefore also engaging kinds of concepts and stories you can come up with if you just allow yourself to get ridiculous. Like, how did they come up with the concept of turtles that are ninjas? There's this level of just insane creativity is what I am for. I love to see this. As a kid, I did not know how insane this concept was. I was just like, yeah, this is a thing that exists. Why not? Everything that exists, I assumed was supposed to. I think you do when you're a child. It wasn't until I was older and was like, oh wait, like, people come up with these ideas. This is not a documentary. This is a concept that someone came up with and was like, this is a thing I want to do. And it became this multimedia empire because people love it so much. And that is how it should be. Leonardo 16, Michelangelo 15, so they are actually different ages. Was that before or after the years? And does that question even make sense? I think I'd heard something in one of the recent movies about them aging at different speeds depending on how much years they got or something. I just assumed they all came from the same egg batch, therefore should be the same age. But I guess not, unless Leonardo's the only one that's 16? And that's part of his mutation is just that he ended up being a year older? Because of how mutation works? In their world? Yeah, Leonardo is older than everyone else by a year-ish. Wonder if it's just that he hatched, like, a day earlier, and everything that happens in every Ninja Turtles thing is actually on Leonardo's birthday. That's the only reason he's a year older. I have curiosities. You may notice as I'm going through these games that I try to make sure that everybody's got a turn. I try to switch up which turtle I'm playing as every now and then and try to keep camera time relatively even for everyone within reason. I do end up favoring Leonardo because Leonardo is my favorite, but when I think about the Ninja Turtles, there isn't actually one individual Ninja Turtle that I like more than I like the Ninja Turtles as a group. Dividing them up into doing things on their own just doesn't sit as well with me. I like it when they're all together. I recognize that solo excursions are sometimes necessary for character development if you're telling a story. But as far as general preference, I like to have them all together, so anytime a game allows me to switch up turtles mid-run, I do try to give everyone a turn. As for why Leo's my favorite, it seems to be a strange combination of circumstances. Because normally, a pattern I've noticed with myself, normally I don't favor the leader of a group, if I'm picking a favorite. But my childhood, at the time that Ninja Turtles was becoming prominent, my exposure to Ninja Turtles was split up and weird with segmented information. And I think people at school, probably just kids, probably not teachers, I don't think the teachers care as much, but like probably the kids, just kept asking me who my favorite Ninja Turtle was. And all I had seen was commercials. I didn't even know how many there were. And honestly, I might have not even known Leonardo's name at the time. Because that probably also took me a while, considering that they've all got complicated names. But when people ask me, I think I just said the blue guy with the swords. Because blue is my favorite color, and the swords were my favorite weapons. And my logic was, he can chop heads off. Like, basically, Axe Cop logic was the reason that Leo was my favorite. And when I started actually being able to take in Ninja Turtles content, whether it was shows or the movies or action figures or whatever, my opinion didn't change. Leonardo remained my favorite, despite him being the leader. And that's where it gets weird, and that's where this segmented information that informed my opinion of things comes into play. Because for whatever reason, I didn't see the show that much. I don't know if I was just one of those kids who had a really hard time sticking to a schedule, and so I just couldn't... Like, I never happened to be watching TV at the same time that Ninja Turtles was on. And it's not like today where you could just have a streaming service that plays a particular thing all the time whenever you want. If I didn't happen to be watching the right channel at the right time of day, I didn't see that show. But we had a VCR, and I had the Ninja Turtles movie, and so I would just watch the Ninja Turtles movie over and over and over. And I was convinced for the longest time that Leonardo was actually not the leader. Mainly because of the movie. Because, if you remember the song, it says, Raphael, he's the leader of the group. That was my primary source of information for who the leader was. Now, there's a scene earlier than the end credits, where Raphael is complaining about Leo, like sarcastically commenting on him being the great leader. And Leonardo says, I never said it was your great leader. And me, who took everything way too much at face value, was just like, well, there you go, he's not the leader, he just said so. And even when it came to the cartoons, when I did manage to see the cartoons, and even though the opening song says, two separate sentences, Leonardo leads, Donatello does machines, what I always heard as a kid was, single sentence, Leonardo leads, Donatello's dust machine. Which I thought was a weird thing to comment on. A weird thing to brag about. But, whatever, you do you. If that's your thing, Leonardo, then go ahead, that can be your thing. I never questioned it. For so long, I seriously thought Raphael was the leader. Because he was clearly the main character in most of the content I saw. He was most people's favorites. And in the cartoon, he was the one who had all the lines. He had all the funny lines. And I think as a kid, that was my litmus test for who the main character is in a show, is who has all the clever lines. That's probably the protagonist. So there you go, that was my explanation for all of that. Now, clearly Splinter has a favorite, because I recently rewatched the first episode on YouTube, and when Splinter is introducing the 4 turtles, he's introducing the turtles one by one, he gets to Raphael. No sword on Earth can withstand his sigh. And Leonardo, whose whole thing is swords. Leonardo, master swordsman, best guy with a sword. Anything to do with swords, anything at all to do with swords. He's the best. He's gonna win hands down when it comes to swords. And Raphael, who makes swords not matter. And Michelangelo, who has a gun. And I've seen some of the films that came out after the original 3. Recently saw Mutant Mayhem. That was fun. I actually liked how it focused more on the feeling of being a teenager. The Ninja Turtles always felt older than teens to me. I think Mutant Mayhem was something where when I first heard about it and some of the details about it, I was like, well, that's not my Ninja Turtles. But then I very quickly realized, I don't think my Ninja Turtles ever really existed. I think that was just an ideal that I had in my head of what the Ninja Turtles should be. And that, like, the perfect version never quite existed. Because Leonardo is my favorite of the Ninja Turtles. But my favorite version of him was just in this, animated shows. This one in the early 2000s. But it, like, hyper-focused on Leonardo to the point that the others didn't shine as much, and as I've said elsewhere, it seemed like Leonardo was trying to be Raphael, instead of just letting Raphael be Raphael. So even though that was my favorite version of Leonardo, it wasn't what was best for the group. But if I'm thinking about my favorite, like, a Turtles experience, apart from maybe games, I think that's the second movie, Turtles 2: Secret of the Ooze. But that one had the worst Leonardo of all time. They just went all in on him being the biggest douche. Like, let's just make him Cyclops from X-Men. Everybody loved Cyclops. I don't think I can think of a single movie or show that featured all the Turtles equally and that had a version of Leonardo that I liked. And that also had, like, probably the correct version of Raphael. Because the version I'm most familiar with is actually the one from the first animated show, in which he was not the angry guy, he was just the sarcastic one. Like, he was the one that made all the jokes. And sounds like Yakko. But I also like Toka and Razor as a pair of enemies to fight more than Rocksteady and Bebop. So I just have this realization one day of, no, I've got this ideal in my head of what I think Ninja Turtles is, and I don't think that ever actually existed in the one product, to the best of my knowledge. So why am I over here going, well, that's not my Ninja Turtles? Because that never actually happened. And once I realized that, I could go into Mutant Mayhem, not requiring it to be any particular thing, just appreciating it for what it is. And what it is was actually quite fun, which I could accept once I realized that You know, it wasn't taking away from anything. As much as I appreciate everything that the Ninja Turtles contributed to pop culture, and I do, I'm very much thankful for everything that they did. I do, however, blame Ninja Turtles for the fact that every game has to have a sewer level. I just have a hard time picturing sewer levels being anywhere near as popular in video games, if not for the existence of Ninja Turtles. I just don't see video game developers being like, hey, we've got this technology where we can create any kind of fantastical fantasy or science fiction world imaginable. And you know where all the kids really want to go? The sewers. Every chance my son gets, he's like, Daddy, when can we go to the sewers? And I have to be like, oh, sport, not today. We can't afford it. That's something we have to save up for. Oh, but Daddy, I so do badly want to go to the sewers. Perhaps one day, Daddy. I'd be like, well, you know, son, Daddy is the head of a big video game company, and, you know, we can make some things happen. We can make some interesting things happen. Oh, Daddy, do you think they could put a sewer level in your video game, Daddy? Son, if it's what you really want, I'll put sewer levels in every video game. Oh, thank you so much. You're the best, Daddy. I know, son.